Guys, we've got jam-packed wall-to-wall coverage on this situation that is developing with conference realignment. The Pac-12, we've got updated chances they dissolve. We've got major stuff happening in the world of college football, including the huge news of the AP poll that came out that I recapped and talked about. But let's get right down to it. Take a look at this quote. We view survival as a 4.5-point favorite over extinction. That's anything but an overwhelming favorite. So if they're saying, according to this source, it's kind of a weird way to phrase it. 4.5-point favorite in terms of surviving. That would say there's maybe a 60-65% chance the Pac-12 pulls through and survives, according to this source. And he does say, that's not an overwhelming favorite, that the Pac-12 does survive. And this source is pro Pac-12. So this could be even closer to 50-50. And honestly, I think it is. Because right now, the Pac-12, the number one objective is to fend off the Big 12 from trying to poach mainly Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah. That is the number one issue for the Pac-12. And if they're able to do that, also bringing on two more teams, San Diego State and someone else, that is also something they need to do if this conference wants to pull through. They've got to expand it back up to 12 teams. And speaking of that, it says if the conference holds together, there's a reasonable chance it expands to 12 teams. Why? Well, because of inventory demands. As noted above, one of the Pac-12's chief selling points is the ability to provide inventory for the late TV broadcast windows on both Friday and Saturday. To meet the inventory demands, it very well could need the additional games that the 11th and 12th teams would provide, and if expansion is the decision, San Diego State stands as the obvious call. Houston would be a first-rate addition depending on availability, and I wouldn't expect Houston to be available. In terms of the Houston moving to the Big 12, the Big 12 is expected to get a better TV deal than the Pac-12, so there would be no real reason for Houston to shift course and join the Pac-12 over the Big 12 based solely on the revenue they should be making from joining the Big 12. But we've heard this before. San Diego State, if they're able to keep the 10 teams together and add more, San Diego State is one of the teams. They just built a new stadium. They've got a good base. So they're definitely going to be one of the teams. And then it says, we aren't privy to the documents signed by the university and whether it would be subject. See, I'm not even sure that's an issue. I don't think Houston would want to get out of any sort of binding agreement they have with the Big 12. I don't think they would want to get out. I don't know if they've signed anything and if there'd be any exit fees, but if you're going to make the thought process is the Big 12's next TV deal is supposed to be better than the Pac-12's by quite a few million. So if you're Houston, pivoting and joining the Pac-12 instead of the Big 12 would be a step down. The only positive is the academics are better in the Pac-12. That is just my opinion. We've got other stuff. What Pac-12 needs to do to keep some schools in the conference. Quote, I think the Pac-12 is exploring an incentivized payout structure that for the programs that qualify for the NCAA tournament and college football playoff, won't be surprised if the conference stops the practice of splitting those postseason windfalls evenly among members and gives the bulk of the payout to the programs that earn it. That's common sense. Like, I don't understand. What is the point if, let's just say, for example, Oregon makes the playoff? Why is Colorado getting some of the money that they generate from making, like, that makes no sense. You start reading the actual stipulations of these conferences and how they're basically like cults where they're all making the exact same thing. And this is another situation where it's like, obviously, if you're going to do, if you want to keep Oregon and Washington in the conference, you might want to change to a structure like this, because if they actually have success, you're going to want to give them the bulk of the payout. Obviously, why should Colorado, who goes 2-10, some of these things, this stipulations is so crazy. These conferences are seriously like cults, to where they all make the same exact thing. And if one team makes more than another, they get mad. But it's like, realistically, that's the whole thing with unequal revenue sharing. It just makes sense. It's like taking the two best teams from the conference in, the conference championship game, rather than one from the East and one from the West. One from the West. Why not just take the two best teams? Why not give the teams that may generate more money for the conference, why not give them more money? Especially in the Big Ten, where you've got all the leverage over some of those smaller teams, and those smaller teams would still be making more money, even if they got cut, let's say from $100 million to $80 million, they'd still be making more money. So these conferences are crazy, and I would expect them to do, but to me, that seems like desperation. If they're really thinking, because how much more money would you get? And then you also have to, I guess if the playoff does expand to 12 teams, theoretically, Oregon realistically could consistently make the playoff, even being in a weak Pac-12, depending on how well they recruit. But even then, still, incentivizing that, the schools still have to perform well. And I think right now the Pac-12 is trying to throw anything at the wall. Once again, the major story, 4.5-point favorite, which is kind of a weird way to phrase it. It's basically like a 60% chance the Pac-12 survives. That's according to a Pac-12 source and a Pac-12 writer. So it could be closer to 50-50. With the way things are trending, we will see. And then 6 schools that the Pac-12 should consider adding I believe this is from the Mountain West and the American. And they list San Diego State, SMU, UNLV, Fresno State, Boise State, and Houston, with the home runs being San Diego State and Houston. Of course, I don't expect Houston to go there. There would have to be some crazy incentive for them to leave the Big 12. Well, I guess they haven't even joined the Big 12, but leave the agreement and then go to the Pac-12. Right now, it doesn't make sense, at least from the way that I see it. And then looking at some of these other teams, we've heard SMU and we've heard Fresno State. If you put a gun to my head, I would say it's San Diego State and it's SMU. That's just my personal belief. I think Fresno State's a little bit too small. So to me, it's SMU and it's San Diego State. They want that Texas market, and San Diego State is the obvious choice there. That is clear. We've also got a few other things. So this was an interesting article. Group of 5 teams could have fewer chances after Power 5 realignment. And guys, the way I set up my scheduling model, if we seriously get super conferences, whether it's the 3 super conferences, including the Big 12, or it's just the 2 20-team super conferences with the Big 10 and the SEC, I've said if we get more teams in each conference, why not just go to 10 conference games and 2 non-conference games? And that would severely hurt the group of 5 teams who depend on Ohio State paying Akron money and keeping their football program alive. Who depend on, Alabama paying Austin Peay money. So it could seriously hurt. And this is an interesting article. You can see the obvious reason is financials. That's what Middle Tennessee State coach says, and that's why they schedule. That's why you see Arkansas State playing in Columbus. They need the money, and Ohio State's a team that can pay those type of schools. But if we go to, we get the expanded conferences, more teams in each conference theoretically would make more conference games. And with the SEC, the scheduling they currently have is so ridiculous, where they're playing 4 non-conference games still. And basically every SEC team is facing 3 group of 5 teams and then 1 Power 5 home and home, or 1 Power 5 neutral site. It's the exact scheduling model that Georgia has. They've got the Oregon game, and then I believe they have 3 group of 5 teams, kind of lower tier ranked teams. Actually, normally they have 2 group of 5 and then 1 FCS. That's normally the SEC model. or even 2 FCS, depending on how it sets up. But this could significantly hurt some of these smaller schools, and that is going to have to be a workaround that we will have to see if we can address here, because they do depend on Ohio State giving Arkansas State $1 million. Ohio State always schedules a MAC team because they want to help out the local schools. It's the same thing that Alabama does, with the Sun Belt and whatnot, places like that. Clemson with the Citadel, things like that. So it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening with this situation. And of course, you've got schedules like Michigan and UCLA, who you look at their non-con. That's the type of stuff that we have to eliminate. The Michigan scheduling and the UCLA, and it's not me going against these teams. I know Michigan has scheduled tough teams in the past, but when you schedule that horrible of a non-conference, I think that signals we need a 12-team playoff. That's what I think it signals, because Michigan is scared. They're scared about losing a non-conference game, and then you lose to Ohio State, and you're automatically out of the playoff. That's what happens. So that's why in a 4-team playoff, you can only lose one game. These teams are not going to be incentivized to scheduling tough opponents in the non-conference. If you expand the playoff to 12 teams and expand the conferences even more, you could have more big games. You could have a structure where it's 2 non-conference games, and one of the non-conference games has to be a Power 5, and the other one can be a MAC school or a Sun Belt school, Mountain West, whatever. That is the structure I would set up, and we'll see if they end up doing it. And we've also got this that just broke. Atlanta and Miami will host the 2025 and 2026 college football playoff title games. Unfortunately, Las Vegas had to back out of their 2025 game that they were going to host. So, I mean, it's more of the same with college football. I really would like them to start going to different unique places. I guess, guys, it is sad that Indianapolis finally hosted the playoff, and, I mean, Ohio State did nothing to defend the North. We just allowed Alabama and Georgia to just come up and be the 2 teams. It was like, well, we finally get it up north one year, and it's literally an SEC slop fest. Nothing against those teams. It's great, whatever. I think 2 SEC teams in the national championship, it stunts the growth of the sport. It's not that I hate the SEC. I'm saying you want a team from the West and the North, or from the South and the West, or you want 2 different regions when it comes to the national championship game. And Indianapolis finally hosts it, and you just get the 2 SEC teams, so we have that as well. But guys, that is going to do it for this update regarding conference realignment. We've got the Pac-12 right now trying anything, throwing anything at the wall, any sort of incentivized structure. We're going to hear about their TV deal very soon. We're going to hear about the Big Ten's TV deal very soon. The expectation is the Big Ten is supposed to leave ESPN or not do any games with ESPN. It will be Fox, NBC, and CBS as the big 3 in terms of the media rights deal with the Big Ten. That will be coming probably this week. Well, it was already, the sources had said it was either going to be last week, it was going to be announced, or this week. So it should be coming maybe Tuesday or Wednesday, I would say, anytime. That's just me speculating, but I think that's the next big domino. And then, guys, you also have to remember, we've got a major meeting between the College Football Playoff Committee, the commissioners, and everyone is ready for an expanded playoff. The question is it going to be 12 teams? Is it going to be 16 teams? I really don't care. I just want the thing to get expanded by 2025. But I will say I prefer 12 teams based on the overall, just the overall structure of a 12-team playoff is superior to a 16-team playoff, in my opinion. But guys, that is the next thing I'd say is going to happen. We've got the TV deals that are getting worked out this week. We have the major meeting that's happening in late August about the college football playoff expansion. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.